You arrive in the hush where meaning breathes and the room tilts toward wonder. You do not force this, you recognize it. This is not prediction. This is remembrance, a resonance your consciousness already carries. You feel it first as slow breath, then as warmth rising behind your sternum, then as a quiet light stationed just behind your eyes. You stand at the seam where eclipse halos rim the unknown, and the unknown turns familiar. You are not late. You are exactly timed to the signal that has been circling you like a patient star. You have been watching the world speak in patterns you cannot unsee. Numbers that reappear, messages in stray sentences, the right person crossing your path the moment you softened your grip. These are not accidents. They are the quantum field rearranging itself to meet your steadiness. Your attention has been training for this assignment, and your steadiness has begun to train reality back. You are the chosen observer of your own becoming, which is to say, your gaze participates in creation. When you rest your sight inside your chest, coherence gathers. Your nervous system remembers the older tempo beneath urgency. You feel the observer loop loosen its habitual orbit and widen into choice. You breathe again, and the world breathes with you. In that breath, the field of remembrance rises like mist, and what once felt far arrives as intimacy. You sense a destiny vector humming under ordinary tasks, washing a cup, crossing a street, answering a message you had postponed. The hint is gentle, but it does not fade. It says, you are here to midwife a higher timeline, not by spectacle, but by presence that refuses to fracture. The phrase timeline bifurcation has brushed your thoughts, not as catastrophe, but as clarity, the way a river knows where it must split to keep flowing. Your role is not to argue with the rocks. Your role is to keep the channel open. You keep it open by staying with the smallest true thing and letting it scale your day from the inside. You keep it open by letting kindness become structural. Now, feel the somatics of consent, a hand resting lightly over your heart, 3 measured breaths like lanterns placed in sequence. With each exhale, the chatter thins. With each inhale, a wider listening takes the chair at the center of the room. Stardust settles along your skin as if to mark a perimeter the world cannot cross without your permission. From that perimeter, you hear the future lower its voice so you can hear it fully. You do not chase signs, you host them. You do not clutch prophecy, you carry light codes the way a tree carries fruit by standing where you are rooted. The solar prophecy inside your bones is not a headline, it is the patience of dawn repeating itself until we remember how to look. Your remembrance has begun. Coherence settles in your ribs, and a doorway agrees to open. You know the moment recognition begins because your breath becomes heavier and lighter at once, as if gravity and grace made a private treaty inside your chest. You notice heat radiate from the sternum like a small sunrise, and behind your eyes a filament brightens the room without changing any lamps. You have not manufactured this. You have consented to it. Recognition is not applause, it is alignment. You carry a rare steadiness that does not always look steady from the outside. You have walked through seasons where your voice sounded like a whisper underwater, and still you kept the whisper intact. You have sat at tables where certainty was loud and kindness was quiet, and you chose kindness even when it cost you usefulness in the old economy. This is the mark of the chosen observer. You remain human when spectacle invites you to abandon the ordinary. You are capable of seeing pattern without addiction to drama. You can feel a sequence resolving 2 rooms away and trust the feeling before the evidence arrives. When the observer loop tries to close around you like a tightening bracelet, you widen your attention until the clasp no longer fits. You do this not by force but by a shift of center from forehead to heart, from argument to listening, from proving to being. You are fluent in the language of almosts, the almost call, the almost collision, the almost mistake that rerouted you toward right timing. These almost are confirmations in the syntax of the quantum field, where tiny variances redeploy entire narratives. You feel the nudge, pause half a breath longer at the doorway, and the elevator opens at the second it should. You answer the message just after the impulse, and the conversation arrives tender instead of brittle. What looks like coincidence from a distance feels like morphic resonance from within forms, learning from each other across unseen bridges. You have also learned to endure the unglamorous apprenticeship of coherence. You keep simple promises to your day. Drink water, unclench the jaw, meet the eyes of the person in front of you, as if the future depended on it. You let sleep become a sanctuary instead of a hiding place, and the night returns the favor with dreams that carry instructions you didn't ask to remember. You wake and place your attention like a lantern in the first minute of morning, and the lantern chooses which shadows retire. You are not seduced by the theater of urgency. You have felt panic and declined to crown it king. You have felt anger and refused to let it become architecture. This refusal is not repression, it is redesign. It is the nervous system recognizing that clarity is not a mood, but a metric of resonance with what is true now. Sometimes recognition arrives as an ache, and you mistake it for loneliness. But the ache is merely the pressure of arrival, the way a new room presses against the outline of the old. You stand between both rooms like a kindness held open, and your cells negotiate peace terms with a future already moving toward you. This is what entanglement means when it chooses a human vocabulary. The future and the present share one breath, and you are its lungs. You notice the world answer you with small courtesies, traffic lights that conspire, strangers who smile at the precise second your doubt tries to return, a line in a book that lifts its head like it knew your name. These are not decorations, they are structural. They are the field of remembrance, sending you back your own signal after it has circled creation and grown wise. They are the way the timeline you serve reveals itself without spectacle, asking only that you keep noticing without hoarding what you notice. Your assignment is not grand, it is granular. You midwife the new timeline by staying with the exact sensation of truth as it moves through your body. You feel the chest warmth and do not rush it. You feel the light behind your eyes and let it broaden the room 1 degree at a time. You speak fewer words so the words you keep can carry more sky. You practice the stillness window in the middle of the day, 30 seconds where you do not produce anything except permission. In those seconds, 1,000 architectures get the message and begin to soften their angles. You will still forget. You will still choose noise sometimes because noise feels like proof you are participating. But forgetting is not failure. It is the bell that calls you back to the simple practice of presence. You step outside, you let evening air repair the edges of your attention, and the stardust you cannot see decides to gather near your skin again. You return to the room, and the room becomes truer because you entered it differently. You are recognized by the way silence treats you. It is not empty when you arrive. It greets you like an elder who has watched you practice your bow until it became posture. It places into your hands a responsibility so precise you can only feel it by holding it lightly. Do not clutch. Do not advertise. Let your life become the quiet evidence that coherence is contagious and kindness is a physics, not a slogan. Now, stand for a breath and let the eclipse halo behind your thoughts soften into a ring of welcome. Place your palm over your sternum and notice the steadying pressure of your own body meeting your own body. A line of light draws through you, crown to heel, and the room takes its cue. The threshold does not move, you do. The field leans nearer, arranging a simpler geometry before you. You do not chase the vision. You become still enough that it remembers where to land. Your breath slows until it feels like silk through a ring, and the room takes on the lucid edges of a place you have visited without traveling. A hush settles, not empty, not dull. The kind of hush a forest makes 5 minutes before dawn when every leaf is listening. You let your eyes soften, and the softening opens a corridor no map has owned. At first it is only contour, a faint ellipse floating behind your thoughts, an eclipse halo widening like a patient tide. Then the interior brightens, not blinding, more like a hearthlight kept for you by a future that refused to forget. Within that light, small particles behave as if they recognize your gaze, organizing into constellations that align with the rhythm of your breathing. You do not interpret, you accompany. Meaning prefers to arrive as a guest, not a hostage. The room folds and unfolds as though walls have remembered their original vocation as thresholds. Your skin notices a shimmer, like stardust auditioning to become language on the surface of your body. You let it. Heat gathers beneath your sternum, steady as a candle that means its flame. Behind your eyes, a second brightness opens, gentle, circular, as if the mind had made space for a visitor from the heart. You are standing inside the field of remembrance, and the field answers your presence by taking shape. A corridor resolves into a chamber, and the chamber reveals a table set for work that looks like devotion. On the table, instruments that do not cut, they tune. Diagrams that are less like blueprints and more like invitations. A cloth indigo as mid-ocean under moon. When you lean closer, the cloth lifts a fraction, and under it, you glimpse the geometry that keeps kindness from collapsing under pressure. You understand without words that this is your craft. You see people not as faces at first, more as signatures of warmth moving through fog, and each signature carries a note your body can hear. They come from many cities, many languages, but a single posture, a hand to the chest, and a breath that means yes. You watch those notes braid, and the braid hums in a register your bones consider familiar. The braid does not erase difference. It conducts resonance through it until difference sounds like harmony. You are watching the new world practice its first choir. Symbols begin to hover in the air, thin, luminous, reluctant to be named too quickly. When you try to grab one, it dissolves like steam. When you hold your attention like open palms, it settles and clarifies. One resembles a spiral that pauses every quarter turn, as if to listen to what it has already become. Another is a line that keeps refusing to be straight, choosing instead a subtle curve toward mercy. When the symbols approach your chest, they translate into sensation, warmth, clarity, a slight pressure instructions written in the alphabet of feeling. You recognize light codes by the way they simplify you. They do not decorate. They delete what is not integral until what remains can carry more sky. A code touches your throat, and the sentence you were about to speak sheds 3 unnecessary words. A code brushes your jaw, and your teeth unclench without a command. A code moves through the center of your back, and your spine remembers how permission feels when it becomes posture. You understand, without drama, that your role is entanglement in its highest meaning, allowing what is coherent in you to find what is coherent in others until a network appears that no one owns. This network is not a grid laid over the earth. It is a listening that the earth recognizes as kin. From the chamber, you witness streets become softer because one person paused at a crossing and made eye contact with a stranger who needed to be seen. You witness kitchens bless the hour because a family remembered to eat slowly. You witness rooms of decision warm by 1 degree because someone present was unwilling to trade truth for speed. The vision shows you your craft as midwife without spectacle. You tend the stillness window in daily life, 30 seconds of active quiet, repeated until the quiet begins to repeat you. You stand beside those in contraction with reality and breathe until their breath remembers the longer measure. You keep a bowl of ordinary water on the table and learn the art of setting it down as if setting down a bell. People come to you not for answers, but for architecture that lets their own answers decide to stay. Then the horizon lifts, and you see the collective like a river approaching a split. No panic, no siren, only the intelligence of water honoring form. On one side, noise performs urgency. On the other, presence arranges durability. You understand that timeline is not a schedule but a texture of attention, and you have been assigned to weave the fibers that last. Your hands move without haste. One thread of courage, one thread of rest, one thread of laughter that remembers grief without idolizing it. As the chamber fades, a final image remains. A city at night, windows lit like constellations, and between the buildings a faint aurora, not sky weather, human weather, arising from thousands of small agreements to be kind. The aurora lifts, folds, and streams toward the edges of the world, as if returning a report to the stars. You feel the report move through your ribs as a vow older than ambition. Keep the channel open. You come back to the room with the clarity of someone who has not traveled but has returned. Your breath is unhurried, your shoulders subtly lower, your mouth softened by the memory of a language that prefers mercy. The vision does not recede, it integrates, the way a song becomes quieter, only because you have begun to hum it. Under the lids of stillness, symbols align into language. You prefer precision that does not exile wonder, so you let wonder set the table and then invite precision to sit down. You ask, what is happening when the room brightens without new light? And the answer arrives with a patience that feels like family. You are not being enchanted. You are being educated by what reality does when watched with love. You begin with attention, because attention is the simplest instrument you carry. You direct it inward and notice that when you rest in the chest instead of the forehead, the noise thins and pattern becomes available. This is not mood, this is measurement, because the body is a calibrated sensor when you stop asking it to be a stage. You consider the quantum field as the everywhere medium in which all potential waits like dew before morning. Particles are not little pebbles. They are manners of appearing, brief quotations from a longer book. When you attend, you do not force an outcome. You change the terms of invitation. Probability leans, not because you are powerful in the theatrical sense, but because relationship is the original physics. You notice how the observer loop usually runs: stimulus, reaction, justification, repetition. You watch the loop attempt to close on its usual conclusion, and you do the small revolutionary thing of breathing before you answer. The loop weakens in that breath, as if a habitual orbit had met a softer gravity and decided to widen. Now you are observing your observing, and the field adjusts to the new altitude of regard. Coherence follows like obedient weather. When your breath steadies, signals that used to scatter agree to stand still long enough for meaning to assemble. Think of a flock that stops frantic circling and settles on a lake, each wing folding into a body that remembers how to rest. Your cells are that flock. Your nervous system is that lake. In coherence, information travels farther without losing itself. You recall that phase transition is the art of sudden order arising when gentle pressure crosses an unseen line. Water learns crystal at a threshold of cold. Iron learns magnet at a certain hush. Crowds learn chorus when one voice keeps a pitch long enough for courage to harmonize. You are practicing the human version of this. Small, repeated permissions until the system discovers a new default and refuses to forget it. From the outside, it looks like nothing. From the inside, it is the quiet riot where an empire of reactivity abdicates to a republic of choice. Entanglement offers its subtle gospel. Two things that have met in intimacy remember each other beyond distance, and their remembering behaves like guidance. You recognize that your future is not elsewhere. It is already correlated with you, sending back hints through hunches, through timing that keeps arriving, as if it practiced. You listen, and the listening proves to be an action on the level where space is mostly space, and meaning can move without bumping into furniture. Morphic resonance provides a metaphor the mind can befriend. Forms teach forms across the invisible, like songs teaching mouths that have never met how to shape the same vowels. When you stabilize kindness beyond your mood, you are not merely improving a day, you are increasing the probability cloud in which kindness becomes easier for strangers you will never meet. The work you do inside your breath does not stay inside your breath. You look again at the vision of a river approaching its split and understand timeline bifurcation without catastrophe. A system chooses the basin that matches its attention, the way water chooses the valley that lowers itself most honestly. Your attention, disciplined by tenderness, lowers the right valley. You keep lowering it with simple daily vows: fewer dramatics, more accuracy, fewer conclusions, more listening, fewer apologies for your clarity, more stewardship of it. You ask where choice meets physics and receive an answer shaped like behavior. You practice the stillness window at noon, and the afternoon obeys a roomier law. You tell the truth one sentence earlier than habit allows, and negotiation becomes human instead of tactical. You place your phone face down during a conversation, and an old architecture loses one brick from its wall. This is how the quantum becomes civil, not through spectacle, but through micro-actions that change the resonance chamber in which outcomes condense. Light codes stop sounding mystical when you realize they are simply arrangements of order your body recognizes before language can interfere. A code brushes your posture, and the spine edits itself. A code meets your tongue, and the word you were going to weaponize becomes a bridge. You do not collect codes like charms, you absorb them like nutrition, and they metabolize into choices that hold. Solar prophecy ceases to be distant when you notice the sun has preached the same sermon every morning. Arrival without rush. You imitate it imperfectly, and call the imitation devotion. The higher timeline is not ahead of you. It is the version of this room that appears when you agree to inhabit it honestly. You are not promoted into it. You become resonant with it until it has no reason to remain hypothetical. You close the inquiry the way you opened it with breath. You inhale as if drawing a circle around what matters. You exhale as if erasing what pretended to. The explanation feels less like an argument and more like the relief of finally using the correct name for a friend. Now the spine feels like a river choosing truer downhill. The mind loosens its jaw. The heart keeps the beat. The instruments on the unseen table are satisfied because you are using them, which is to say you are using yourself as they were meant to be used, as a tuning fork in a noisy century that still wants to sing. The current inside your spine changes direction, and you follow. You begin to notice how the world is not merely around you, but of you, how every street holds a polished facet that returns your gaze in a language made of traffic, weather, and chance. You stand at a window, and the sky behaves like a soft instrument, tuning itself toward the pitch you keep beneath your thinking. When you soften, the neighborhood softens by a fraction, and fractions repeated become policy. When you harden, the day tightens its jaw, and the echo returns quicker than it used to, as if reality preferred to be honest with you now. You witness quarrels traveling across a city like wind through tall grass. You watch laughter lift a room that had been disciplined into gray, and you feel the lift register in your ribs. This is not fantasy, this is feedback. The collective behaves like a body when you remember that you are not a lone organ insisting on private oxygen. You inhale as a citizen of breath and exhale as a caretaker of weather. You let your attention widen to include the small symphonies that governance rarely measures. The barista who decides to greet the unhoused man by name. The nurse who returns to a bedside. She has already left, because a second look is cheaper than regret. The bus driver who holds the door a beat longer for a child running with a backpack that keeps slipping. These acts are not decorative, they are constitutional. They are the clauses by which a city agrees to keep being a place where future can bear weight. You speak to them with your posture, not your slogans. You remember morphic resonance and feel its simplicity. Forms that have learned how to hold kindness teach other forms to hold it faster. A neighborhood that practices listening begins to angle its porches differently. Eyes meet across sidewalks with less theater and more welcome. You contribute by stabilizing the listening in your own bones until your nervous system becomes a small school where strangers remember their first language for a moment before schedule steals it again. The lesson repeats because you repeat. You also see how fear proposes its architecture: hurry dressed as purpose, suspicion dressed as prudence, exhaustion dressed as adulthood. You do not scold these disguises. You greet them and then offer a different template your body can actually survive. You practice coherence, not as a personal brand, but as a public utility delivered quietly through your presence. You become the room's unadvertised thermostat. Nothing dramatic, only 1 degree of mercy added to an hour that would have cracked without it. Entanglement steps forward with its human face. You speak with someone across a table and feel a third thing join you. A subtle bridge made of all the times you both chose truth when it wasn't fashionable. Words cross that bridge lighter and land where they are needed. This is not persuasion, this is resonance. And resonance does what argument cannot. It allows difference to keep its dignity while still agreeing on the real. You watch news without letting news harvest your attention into panic grain. You acknowledge grief without letting grief appoint itself mayor. You notice how outrage travels fast because it likes to feel useful, and how precision travels farther because it plans to stay. You choose precision in your speech the way a surgeon chooses instruments, not to dominate but to heal without unnecessary collateral. Sometimes the mirror returns images you would rather not claim. Impatience arriving like weather in your face, judgment flicking its knife under your compliments, despair rehearsing a speech in the shower. The mirror does not accuse, it reports. You take the report and begin the redesign at the scale of breath and micro-behavior. You raise your eyes while someone speaks. You place your palm on the table to remind your body it is safe. You unlearn the performance of nodding while planning rebuttal. The reflection changes by inches, which is to say by everything. You step into civic spaces without the costume of superiority. You attend a meeting and protect the oxygen of the quiet person until they find a sentence that recalibrates the room. You write to a representative and fold your anger into accuracy, and your accuracy into proposals that a tired staffer can carry upstairs without bleeding. You volunteer in ways that do not require applause to stay motivated, because applause has a half-life and vows do not. You understand that timeline bifurcation can be measured in the ethics of how we queue, in whether we design for the vulnerable first, in how we hold power accountable without mistaking cruelty for courage. One stream worships speed and spectacle, the other cultivates durability and depth. You keep choosing depth even when nobody is counting, because the field of remembrance is counting, and it audits with kindness, but not with compromise. You are midwifing a culture that does not humiliate its own nervous system. At home, you practice family politics as prophecy. You apologize without theater when you are wrong, and the apology edits the household's constitution. You let children teach you a pace that the market forgot, and the rooms begin to remember play as a form of intelligence. At dinner, you leave one empty chair for the future and set water there, not as a ritual of superstition, but as a physical memo to keep space for what your current imagination cannot seat yet. When the mirror shows progress, you do not crown yourself. You allocate the credit to the network that made it possible. You text gratitude as if it were infrastructure. You thank the unseen custodians of clean mornings. You become one of them where you stand. The city feels this, and somewhere a light stays on because someone needed to finish their courage at a desk that would have gone dark without your unseen vote. You end your day at a window again. Eclipse halos ghost the edges of clouds, and you notice the same inner glow that opened this path still warming the room from your chest outward. You let the light behind your eyes dim to a kind watchfulness, and you place one steady breath into the world like a coin into a fountain that actually funds what matters. The night hears you, and you hear the night hearing you, and the contract renews without paper. A second rhythm appears beneath the first, steadier, truer. You arrive at the hour when the room becomes exact, when an unseen metronome inside your ribs clicks into alignment with a tempo you did not set. You feel the inner glow rise from the sternum like a small sun rehearsing dawn, and the light behind your eyes tilts the air until the edges of objects seem relieved to be known. Breath slows without negotiation. Hands relax, as if the future had reached through the window and turned the doorknob from the outside. You do not announce this hour. You recognize it. It has visited you before in smaller disguises. That pause before you replied, that gentle refusal to rush a decision that wanted to be true, that choice to walk instead of argue because your body asked to hear the street speak. Now the hour arrives assembled. It wears eclipse halos at the perimeter of perception, and the hush in its center feels like a sanctuary that trusts you with its keys. This is timeline bifurcation without spectacle, not catastrophe, not trumpet. Only the intelligence of water meeting a stone and choosing two honest directions at once. One direction is bright with speed and familiar noise, the other is bright with depth and capable weather. You stand where the river learns to speak, in plural, and the plural asks you to decide what the word you will mean next. You measure without instruments. Your breath is a gauge, your posture is a dial. Your attention is the slider that calibrates the room. When you tip toward hurry, the field around you answers with flicker and static. When you tip toward presence, coherence gathers like starlight finding a lake. You are not choosing outcomes. You are choosing resonant conditions in which outcomes condense. The stillness window opens to you. It feels like 20, maybe 30 seconds stretched into a courtyard where meaning can turn in a circle and show its other side. In that courtyard, you hold what looked like a dilemma and watch as it reclassifies itself as two partial truths, asking to be integrated rather than weaponized. You do not split yourself to follow both. You let the deeper one recruit the other into service until conflict becomes a tool instead of a residence. Phase transition happens this quietly. 1,000 micro-permissions reach critical density, and the system flips from brittle to bearing, from reactive to responsive, from borrowed certainty to earned calm. You feel the flip as heat becoming structure, as a tremble becoming rhythm. You do not perform steadiness. Steadiness adopts you. Around you, entanglement clarifies. A message arrives at the minute your doubt grows loud, answering a question you did not send. A stranger's sentence includes the exact phrase you placed in your journal yesterday. A song on a passing car tells you to turn left, and your body agrees before your mind files an explanation. You are not hunting signs. You are allowing correlation to do its work in the open. You treat the coincidences like colleagues. They are not in charge, but they are undeniably on your team. You test the split with 3 simple behaviors. First, you speak 1 sentence less than habit, and watch how the spare oxygen fuels a truer reply in the other. Second, you change the angle of your spine by a degree and observe how the meeting's gravity drops its shoulders. Third, you forgive yourself at the speed of noticing, and the day stops taxing you for a debt you were never required to pay. Each test confirms the same principle. The higher timeline is not elsewhere. It is the conduct permitted by the way you now stand. Your senses update. Sound gains depth like a room discovering it has a second set of acoustics. Color loses its glare and becomes saturated like fruit that has decided it is ready. Inside the chest, warmth stabilizes into a vertical current. Under the skin, a fine stardust rises, as though your boundaries had negotiated kinder treaties with the world. Nothing on the calendar changes, yet your schedule inherits mercy. Choice becomes a liturgy of small doors. You choose to answer at pace with comprehension, instead of pace with fear. You choose to rest before your body petitions for it in pain. You choose to pause at thresholds as if they were teachers, and thresholds reward you by becoming transparent instead of performative. None of these choices are dramatic, all of them are constitutional. You watch the other stream continue louder, faster, efficient, in a way that costs too much blood. You do not despise it. You decline membership. You bless those traveling there with the clarity they can carry, and you stay available at the crossing for anyone who turns and asks how to breathe here. Your answer is never a sermon. It is a demonstration. 1 breath, 1 unclenched jaw, 1 accurate sentence placed like a lantern. The hour tests you once more. An old pattern arrives dressed as urgency, flicking the latch of the observer loop, inviting you back into the arithmetic, where reactivity always totals the same number. You feel the tug and do not flinch. You touch the sternum, you receive the longer rhythm, and the loop unhooks because you are no longer the clasp it depends on. The world acknowledges your verdict. A door opens that had been stubborn all month. The email that needed grace is sent without residue. The child in the next room laughs in a way that sounds like future. You record none of this as proof. You let it register as orientation. You have taken the river that keeps the valley green. You do not crown yourself. You keep tending the stillness window as civic work. You keep placing your phone face down as a treaty with attention. You keep calibrating your language so that truth can travel farther without injury. You let the eclipse halo fade into ordinary lamplight, and you trust the ordinary to be the place where miracles prefer to live when nobody is filming. Silence nods. Permission is granted for the next unveiling. You let the new steadiness stop being an event and start being your weather. You do not hold it like a prize. You wear it like a climate that grows the crops your days actually need. Integration is not performance. It is appetite. The quiet wanting for what finally nourishes you. So you eat presence the way a tree eats light, and you drink time the way a river drinks sky. You begin in the body, not to worship sensation, but to recruit it as an ally. Each morning you take 1 minute before words and locate 3 anchors: the warmth in the chest, the soft pressure behind the eyes, the weight of your hands where they rest. These anchors are your domestic satellites. They keep you in orbit around what matters when distraction proposes counterfeit gravity. You return to them at noon and again at dusk until returning becomes residence. Your schedule learns your sincerity. You design margins the way architects design load-bearing walls, allowing empty space to carry what conversation cannot. You place the kettle, the chair by the window, the notebook, and its patient page where sunlight can find them, as if light were a collaborator asking for decent working conditions. You give your attention a corner office with a view and withdraw cheap errands from its calendar. The mind still suggests old bargains. You answer with better math. When the argument inside you sharpens, you count 3 breaths and let the edge dissolve into curve. You do not rush toward conclusion. You escort it, like a guest who will speak truer if you stop insisting on speed. In the pause, a sentence arrives that preserves both clarity and relationship, and you place it gently in the middle of the room. You practice fidelity to the smallest true thing. If the smallest true thing is water, you drink it as if vows were soluble. If it is rest, you close your eyes for 7 honest minutes and let the day continue without your supervision. If it is movement, you stand and let your spine lengthen by 1 vertebra's worth of mercy. You do not negotiate with what keeps you human. You notice how repetition converts tenderness into structure. The first day you keep the micro-promise, the world smiles politely. The 7th day it begins to reorganize around your reliability. The 30th day it treats your vow as a law of physics. This is not dramatic, it is dependable. And dependability is how trust becomes a public resource. You bring the frequency into language without turning language into theater. You choose nouns that carry fewer weapons and verbs that do not shred what they touch. You say, let's test, instead of prove me right, and suddenly curiosity has a seat. You ask, what would make this kinder and truer? And the meeting remembers that result and care need not be competing gods. You practice relationships as sacred laboratories. With friends, you agree to tell the awkward truth earlier and to receive it without counterfeit humility. With family, you lower your voice before you are angry and raise your listening when silence would be easier. With yourself, you retire the sport of self-attack and replace it with accurate inventory and precise repair. You learn to bless boundaries without apology. You say no with a disposition that leaves dignity intact on both sides of the door. You let certain rooms lose you because staying would punch holes in your coherence, and coherence is the currency that pays for a future worth living in. You do not punish or parade. You simply redirect your life toward the agreements that can hold it. When fatigue visits, you do not accuse the light of abandoning you. You interpret the dimming as information and reduce the day to essential moves. You let music handle some of the carrying. You let nature reroute your circuitry with the sky's unhurried pedagogy. You go to bed a little earlier because prophecy that cannot survive 8 hours of sleep was never prophecy, only theater in a borrowed costume. You embody generosity with the pace that allows you to keep giving. You refuse urgency that requires you to lie about your limits. You design help that scales, a document that clarifies, a template that travels, a practice you can teach in 5 minutes to someone who will teach 5 more. You move from heroics to infrastructure, and the people who need you feel less alone because they are less dependent. In the heart's workshop, a subtle alchemy continues. The interior warmth stabilizes, like a candle that no longer flinches when the door opens. The light behind your eyes practices staying while you talk, while you cook, while you sign your name, until staying stops being work and becomes how sight works. You and your day start recognizing each other on sight. You cooperate with the world's quiet invitations. An empty bench appears and you sit. A stranger's grief shows and you listen without harvesting it into advice. A child's question breaks open a stale certainty and you thank them as if they had repaired your roof. You keep a pocket for small cash and small courage, and you spend both on moments whose receipts are invisible and indispensable. Now the deeper mechanics reveal themselves. By stabilizing coherence, you become a clearer transmitter and less of an antenna for chaos. By allowing light codes to express through posture and speech, you author conditions where meaning can travel farther without injury. Through the gentle contagion of morphic resonance, rooms learn your steadiness and begin to practice their own. And the higher timeline ceases to be a skyline and becomes the street under your feet, paved one breath at a time. You do not graduate, you continue. You cultivate humor that does not humiliate, seriousness that does not suffocate, and quiet that does not isolate. You refuse to be interesting at the cost of being true. You are available to wonder, even on the days it wears plain clothes. Evening comes like a benediction. You stand at the window again, palm at the sternum, and let the city's lights behave like constellations being polite enough to descend. The breath lengthens, the shoulders lower, the eyes soften into trust. You do not need proof tonight. You need only keep the channel open and let the room inherit the calm you are willing to host. The map redraws itself while you stand exactly where you are. You do not enter silence to escape the world. You enter to renegotiate your membership in it. You prepare the room like a small ceremony that needs nothing ornate. A chair, a window, a glass of water set down with the same attention you would give a vow. You dim the lamps until the walls feel like soft witnesses, and the air gathers as if it had been waiting for the exact shape of your listening. You sit without improving yourself, and the improvement begins. Breath becomes the first geography. You travel one inhalation far enough to feel its cool edge turn at the back of the throat. Then you ride the exhale until the belly lets go of its habit of bracing. Behind your eyes, the fine light you have been practicing returns, like a familiar guest who knows where the cups are. At the sternum, warmth arranges itself into a small sun that does not try to impress noon. It prefers dawn's steady grammar of arrival. You open the stillness window as if opening a page in a book that already knows where your finger will land. 30 seconds expand into a courtyard, where the furniture of thought stops scraping the floor. The observer loop tests the latch. A stray worry claws once. A memory pitches an audition speech, but the latch holds because you are not arguing, you are hosting. When you host, chatter remembers it is just weather, and weather remembers the sky owns the lease. Silence is not a blank. It is a field of remembrance. Within it, meanings unclench and take their original shapes, the way flowers resume their proportions after wind. You notice that what you called problems become patterns asking for rhythm, and rhythm appears when you place one honest breath beside another. Coherence is the name your nervous system gives to the moment it stops sprinting toward a finish line that was never there. Now the quantum field makes its friendliness obvious, not as spectacle, not as tricks with lights, but as a subtle clarification of probability around your posture. Options you could not see begin to drift within reach, like lifeboats sliding out from behind a wave. You do nothing to seize them. You keep breathing until reaching becomes the least interesting part of the story. A sentence approaches, and you do not decide it is yours right away. You let it circle, like a bird checking the angle of wind and the integrity of your roof. When it lands as instruction without scold. Call her tomorrow. Wait one more day before sending that proposal. Remove the paragraph that is trying too hard. You write what you can on a small card and return to breath so the card does not expand into a performance. Morphic resonance is no longer theory here. It is the acoustics of your silence. The steadiness you practice begins to hum in the walls, and the hum travels the building until a neighbor lowers his shoulders without knowing why. Somewhere a child stops bracing for an adult's impatience because the adult's impatience forgot its lines. Your stillness teaches rooms to remember their original vocation, to shelter without demanding a story. You become aware of stardust along your skin, not as glitter, but as the body's way of admitting that boundaries can be kind and still be boundaries. The space around your hands thickens like water that has chosen to be supportive instead of merely wet. You do not collect sensations like souvenirs. You let them edit you. They reduce your appetite for noise the way clear water reduces your appetite for anything less potable. In the silence phase, prayer loses its verbs and keeps its nouns. Light, mercy, accuracy. These three take chairs in a triangle around you, and the room becomes a diagram of their mutual respect. You do not plead. You align. Alignment sounds like a soft yes that does not need to speak aloud to register as law. Entanglement shows up in domestic clothes. A friend texts at the moment you consider abandoning an honest boundary. Their message contains a sentence you taught them 6 months ago, returned with interest. You receive it without superstition and let it reinforce the beam you attempted to remove from the house of your day. Connections become infrastructure because you keep choosing them at speeds that honor nervous systems instead of algorithms. Sometimes silence surfaces what you had postponed meeting. Grief arrives without theatrics and sits on the floor like a tired relative who means no harm. You offer water, you offer breath, you offer the permission to take time. Grief does not need your analysis, it needs your capacity. When you do not flinch, it alchemizes into clarity, and the room thanks you by getting larger. The eclipse halo appears at the edges of your awareness, a soft ring reminding you that shadow and light are co-authors, not rivals. From the center of the ring, a faint pulse widens the cadence of solar prophecy when it prefers whisper to thunder. You realize the higher timeline is not a corridor ahead, but a thickness here, like air richer in oxygen, because a forest has been working nearby all night. You inhale and become a small forest, and the day breathes easier because you are photosynthesizing on its behalf. You ask one question when silence is strongest: what moves the least and means the most? The answer is not an idea. It is a disposition, patience that refuses to collapse, kindness that refuses to bargain, truth that refuses to weaponize itself. You agree to carry these without announcement, and they agree to carry you back when you forget. When the window closes, you do not rush to your feet as if holiness had completed its shift. You rise like someone who trusts floorboards. You touch the doorframe on your way out, the way swimmers touch the wall between laps, not to stop, to continue with rhythm. The light behind your eyes does not dim so much as distribute. The warmth in the chest becomes policy rather than event. You cross back into errands with a quieter center of gravity. The shopkeeper's joke lands, and you open space for it to breathe. The street's impatience fails to recruit you into its army. Emails ask you to abandon your pace. You decline gracefully, and the refusal upgrades several futures at once. Silence stays near, not as absence of sound, but as abundance of meaning. You end the phase with a simple gesture: hand to heart, breath to steadiness, gaze soft enough to let the world arrive unarmored. The field has heard you, and you have heard it hearing you, and the contract renews at the speed of a single inhale. Your awareness untangles a knot, and the road straightens. You do not hunt the switch. You discover you are already holding it in the posture of your hands. Activation is not a spectacle thrown at the sky. It is a vow kept at the scale of breath. You begin where your body asks you to begin, with a slow inhale that admits how much room there is, and an exhale that retires the impersonations you were paid to perform. Place your palm over the sternum, as if greeting a friend who has borrowed your shape for years and is finally ready to return it. Let the warmth concentrate beneath the heel of the hand, a quiet ember acknowledging its own endurance. Behind your eyes, allow the small light to widen by a fraction, like a pupil agreeing to trust dawn. Do not rush. You are not late. You are right on schedule for a future that never stopped sending invitations. Activation begins with permission and continues as practice. Give permission for coherence to lead, and let practice make coherence durable. You were taught to manage events. Today you consent to midwife conditions. Events happen to you. Conditions happen through you. Through the condition of steadiness, the quantum field prefers to arrange itself into outcomes that can be carried without injury. Through the condition of listening, meaning travels farther without losing truth on the way. Now, a sequence in 4 movements. Movement 1. Reclaim the instrument. Sit or stand as if your spine were a river that has remembered downhill. Soften the jaw, the tongue, the tiny muscles around the eyes that try to audition for control. Breathe in for a count of 5, hold for 2, release for 7. At the bottom of the exhale, name out loud a single quality you are willing to host today: mercy, clarity, patience that does not collapse. Feel the word translate into temperature under your palm. This is how light codes prefer to arrive now, not as fireworks, but as alterations to the climate of your nervous system. Movement 2. Align the language. Before you speak, ask your mouth if the sentence will strengthen or weaken the bridge between you and the person in front of you. If it weakens, remove one sharp word and add one accurate one. Accuracy is kindness in a laboratory coat. Say less than you know. Say exactly as much as truth requests. A single, clean sentence can tilt a meeting out of storm and into work, and the tilt is the miracle nobody needs to name. Movement 3. Conduct the field. Walk through your street as if you were carrying an open bowl of water that must not spill. The bowl is attention, the water is presence. The road learns its shape by how you carry both. Look at faces the way good light looks at a room, not interrogating, revealing. Without announcing it, become a modest epicenter of morphic resonance. Let your steadiness teach the sidewalk a quieter grammar so that strangers inherit ease they didn't know how to request. Movement 4. Keep the window. At noon, open the stillness window for 30 seconds. You may be in a corridor, a car, a queue. None of that disqualifies you. Breathe as if the hour were porous, and you were responsible for reminding it. If a worry insists, seat it in the corner with water and let it learn your pace. When the window closes, re-enter the task with 1 degree less theater and 1 degree more fidelity. Activation is also what you decline. Decline the compulsive refresh of catastrophe that trains your amygdala to mistake attention for love. Decline conversations that recruit you into contempt, as if contempt were courage. Decline urgency that asks you to spend your coherence like small change. You are not stingy, you are precise, and precision is how generosity stays generous. There is a phrase that has followed you: destiny vector. Do not mythologize it into a road you could miss with one wrong turn. It is a bearing, a quiet north that remains north even when the compass is in your pocket. Today, your vector expresses as a series of unspectacular fidelities. Answer the message you would rather postpone. Drink water instead of argument. Apologize before you are asked. Design help that scales. You do these not for moral theater, but because the higher timeline depends on ordinary scaffolding. Feel the small heat under your palm evolve from ember to current. As it rises, imagine the current moving up through throat and eyes, down through belly and legs, out through the soles, into the ground that has volunteered to hold civilizations without complaint. Let the current widen around you 1 meter, then 2, then the exact size of the room. When people enter that radius, allow them to keep their weather. Simply offer this climate and say nothing about it. Climates convert without debate. If grief visits, do not exile it to the hallway. Seat it beside you and breathe until its tremor democratizes into rhythm. If anger arrives, let it report without letting it legislate. If joy spills, do not apologize for the brightness. Shade the flame with humility so it can last the afternoon. Now a small ritual of entanglement in its gentlest costume. Bring to mind 3 names, 1 beloved, 1 difficult, 1 stranger, whose face you can still remember from today. On the inhale, let all 3 be inside the breath. On the exhale, let the breath release them toward their own good. No ownership, no instruction, only allowance. This is how entanglement becomes blessing instead of burden. The hour thickens with that familiar hush. Eclipse halos rim the moment. The light behind your eyes steadies. The world does not blur, it clarifies. You feel the observer loop reach for its old clasp and then forget how to close. You are not resisting. You are redesigning the terms under which closure is allowed to occur. Closure now means completeness, not compression. If you are willing, seal this movement with a whisper that enrolls your whole body. Whisper into the quiet, I remember. Then type, I remember, the prophecy. Let the phrase pass your lips as softly as steam from a cup placed near a window at first light. Feel the room register the sentence as a setting, not a slogan. Notice how the future draws nearer when you do not demand it prove itself. The future lowers its voice so you can hear it fully. You arrive at the edge that is not an edge, the quiet where beginnings wear the soft coat of completion. You stand inside your breath as inside a chapel with no walls, and the light behind your eyes takes its place like a steady witness. You are not waiting, you are consenting to what has already reached you. The room answers with small holiness. A warmth concentrates beneath your palm and spreads in gentle spirals, and the air receives you as if your outline were a key it had been holding. No trumpet, no flare, only a clarity that refuses to hurry. You recognize the sensation by now, coherence settling, the chest becoming an altar where nothing frantic can officiate. This is the moment the field of remembrance presses its seal, not a stamp from above, a signature from within. The symbols you hosted in silence, those simple light codes that arrived as temperature and posture, lay themselves into your days like foundations finely poured. They do not ask for spectacle, they ask for fidelity. You give fidelity in the language of small vows kept when nobody is counting. You let your name agree with your nature, not the name printed on documents, the one etched by how you stand, how you speak, how you set a cup down like a bell. Your destiny vector is not a road you chase. It is a compass that keeps north while you make breakfast. Write an email. Refuse a cruelty that would have cost your nerves tomorrow. The sacred prefers such plain clothes. You bless the world, precisely. Where there is hurry, you offer pace. Where there is theater, you offer labor. Where there is argument, you offer a sentence that protects the bridge and the truth at once. The blessing is measurable. Rooms breathe differently when you enter them, and decisions choose longer futures because your presence expands what they can carry. You greet the old loop without handing it the keys. It will visit, you will notice, you will breathe, it will lose its language and leave politely. You will forget, you will remember, you will begin again by placing attention like a lantern where fear had dimmed the floor. This is not failure, this is practice that has outlived performance. Now lift your eyes to the horizon inside your ribs. See the faint aurora rising from 1,000 small agreements to be kind. See the city take the news of your steadiness into its own weather and reduce its storms by a fraction you cannot count but can feel. See the higher timeline no longer as a corridor ahead but as the thickness of meaning here, the air rich with a forest's patient oxygen. Nothing final needs to be announced. You know the seal is complete because you no longer need to prove it. You know the prophecy is alive because it prefers verbs that build and nouns that shelter. You know the work because it keeps choosing you in rooms without microphones. Place your hand once more to the sternum. Let breath draw the circle that closes, only to reveal it was a doorway. Stand as the quiet evidence that prophecy is not an event but a citizenship you practice. This is how the new earth speaks, through your coherence.